Maybe I start first. Dexter, hi everyone. Hi Topsy. Just share some thoughts because in the past week or rather, we were inundated by two very important news article. One was Elon Musk takeover of Twitter, and I was and also the week before MIT Technology Review released its final article on AI colonialism. Okay, it's a series of articles that's explore how data is being used in the same way as in the past the land and resources were taken away from by colonial masters, so as to speak, and take advantage and kind of sell it back to the owners of the land. So I thought these two articles were quite interesting, because let me start by sharing my thoughts on starting with Twitter, because I think we all know that in the media, Elon Musk is buying over. He has not completed the purchase, by the way. It probably takes some time before the the purchase goes through. Obviously, for 44 million, $1 billion decision is not done overnight, right? As early as January of this year, January 21st, just to give you a simple timeline, um, Elon Musk started to buy very quietly Twitter shares on January the 21st. And by March 14, he was, buying bit by bit public shares. And by March 14, he accumulated over 5% stake in the whole company, right? Well, he was supposed to report this, but he did not. Okay. And he continued to purchase that, what you call that, the public stocks, continued to amass his what he called his stake in the company. And in March of this year, he started criticizing Twitter, right? So, but his stake was still secret. Nobody knew about this. He was supposed to disclose, but he did not disclose it. He kept it very, very private, in breach of SEC law, and he continued to criticize, and he wants to do real free speech and all that, right? So, but at the back, he was buying stocks, and he ended up buying a huge amount of stock. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, it came out to about 9%, and he became the single biggest shareholder of Twitter, right? Um, then he had no. Then he made the effort to become an active investor in April. So he began to engage with the board, right? Okay, and and behind the scenes, he has no choice because the way Twitter was set up is that there's no single biggest founder shareholder. All the employees own shares, but they are not a single shareholder. So this person, Elon Musk, a very rich man, probably, if I'm not mistaken, the richest man right now, okay, by valuation, suddenly own a very, very powerful social media platform. Okay, and with the $44 billion stake, to purchase the company, the board have agreed to sell, and it is now in the process of taking the company private. What does this mean? This means that being the biggest shareholder, he now has full say and control over the company. How he defines free speech, how he wants to redesign the algorithms to whose advantage is now up to a single person. So this is interesting and also very alarming for me, and I think for many social activists, all right? Because we have seen over the last couple of months where Elon Musk and Twitter is concerned, you have seen the whole process of how a rich, huge tech entrepreneur became bigger and buying into not a software, not an application, but buying into social media space. What has happened is he has bought into platforms that can create, can alter, and even generate narratives, right? And who will be the overall winner of this? Okay, we can all speculate, says Elon Musk will be the winner because he can now decide on this. As much he says he wants to take the company private, want to make the algorithm open source, but this is still questions. We're not sure, right? But the fact is, he has over the past couple of months and accumulating to this event, we have seen how powerful social media and tech giants owners can be. So that's number one. Even President Biden responded with concern, right? That this is pretty alarming because right now you just you have the power to change people's narrative and how you write algorithms, how you're able to influence more and more people. So that's number one. How is this related to AI colonism? Is that we have seen how this entire uh, power play turned out based on what we've seen from Elon Musk taking over of Twitter. And AI colonism is pretty much in that space where who owns the platform owns the data. Who owns the data? They are able to benefit, monetize, and continue uh, to be above everyone else. They say now I have all the data and I can now sell it. I can do whatever I want with it with that data. And in when we talk about colonism, we are talking about in the past how land extraction of resources exploitation was done in a very violent way. For example, slavery, claiming of land, even things like how multinational corporations take seeds from India, for example, and from seeds they generate GMO and make tons of money, but very little effort, very little resource and benefit goes back to the place where the seed is originated. So that kind of colonism, that kind of extraction of resources for the benefit of the powerful, is now reflected in data. For example, how what do you call this? Uh, language, for example. In the last article, language was an example how the old traditional languages of the Pacific Maori people in New Zealand, for example, can be taken out and then turned into language programs and sell back to people to learn, right? So this is if this is not colonism, I don't know what it is called. So what's the difference between these two? Or what's the similarity between the Elon Musk and colonism? Basically, it, the power and control, okay, over the data, over the digital space, can fall to people who have a lot of money, people in control. So the balance of power is tipping, right? The reason I want to share this and kind of bring this out is to have us think about uh, how do we engage, how do we socially engage in a space like this, right? And how do we make people aware that this is happening? In 200 years ago, the capture of land was very violent. We know, we can feel it. There were murders, there were killing. It was very blatant. It was very physical. But this whole extraction of data, our data, what we own, right, is taken out and monetized sell back to us, right? Right. So, and we don't even know it. We are not even aware of this. So this is it's a very very big difference. So just to just to kind of set the tone, I just want to share these 2 points. The whole Elon Musk take over Twitter. I'm not going to criticize and comment about what he's going to do, but I'm talking about the manner and the whole structure, how this thing happened. Okay, and there's no one can do anything about it. Even the employees or the rest of the shareholders, they can't do anything about this whole takeover, right? So this is the challenge here. So for social activists like us in this room, what do we do? How do we respond to this? Okay, do we understand this enough that that this is affecting our lives, and that we need to find ways to intervene and respond? So yeah, I'm kind of starting off by sharing this, sharing my views with you, and kind of open up to discussion. If you see it this way, or how do we kind of wrap our heads around all this? Yeah. So that's my kind of opening, kind of introduction. Yeah, I hope it makes sense to you. Kind of open the discussion. Thank you, Dexter. Back to you, or anyone else. Yeah. Where is
Yeah.
the
Thanks, Vidya. That was a great introduction, and yeah, I mean, a lot of interesting threads came up immediately for me. But I also want to encourage any of the people in our audience, if you have any thoughts on what Vidya said, raise your hand, and yeah, we can call on you. But the thing you said about someone like like President Biden, being alarmed at this type of this use of this use of power, like Elon Musk's financial power. There's almost some irony in there, because the previous president used Twitter so much as a means of his own, like, yeah, as like a bullhorn. And obviously he's not on the platform anymore, and he might be one of the first people that Trump Musk reinstates. It's like a lot of people talking about that. But it's interesting how, I've been reading articles that talk about Twitter as like the public square, or like the commons, where people gather to share their ideas in a kind of democratic process. But I think one of the definitions of a commons would be that nobody can own it, which is evidently not true anymore, or potentially not true anymore. And so it does feel like a kind of a warping of what might be seen as a democratic tool. But there's also the fact that Twitter is only, I think, really relevant to the United States. At least in what I've been reading, it's like most of the users are in the United States. Most of them are like journalists or politicians, people of influence, so to speak. So I'm also wondering what the large scale impacts of this type of acquisition would have on like more of this global marketplace of ideas, or not even a marketplace, just like our ability to communicate freely. Yeah. Those are some of the things that first came up for me. Yeah.
I mean, just to jump back in on the Biden thing, Biden's response, there are a couple of ways of looking at it, right? And I read somewhere else, and there's this discussion that's going on right now, that tech companies, right, large, very profitable tech companies are becoming geopolitical players, right? If I recall, there's a political analyst called Ian Bremmer from an organization called G0 Media. He talks a lot about how the big tech companies are starting to position themselves to be a geopolitical actor, and it is becoming very true, right? So I think if you look at it from a very macro perspective, and you see this situation, you can see power play happening, because politics and politicians depend on their supporters, and there's a certain reason they support. There's a certain message that resonate with the supporters. That's why they support them. So they continue to echo this message. Then those messages are being distributed um, by the media, whether it's the print media, social media, whatever media. Now we know that the digital media, the social media, has become a very powerful part of it. And recently in Biden's the press dinner event, he has reinstated the power of traditional media having to needing to play a role to in a way counter the narrative of the social media platforms. So I think there are a lot of dynamics in happening and in play right now. Um, the other part is that does it happen only in the United States? No, I think this whole tech giant tech companies also play out in Asia, right? They may be American-based companies like Facebook that has influenced certain countries, Twitter have influenced certain countries, Instagram may be favored in other countries, or Line, for example. So it is, in one way or another, these media platforms have become a center for the amplification of certain narratives, right? So, and by doing that, the owners of this platform become very rich, and they continue to do so. While they do that, they harness all the data, they harness all your discussions, they know what you're talking about, and so on. And it's easy to change that narrative. Right? So that's my view, and I think we need to be aware of that, that this happening, and understand it in more detail. I don't claim that I understand it a lot, but I can see trends that happening today, right? Yeah. And this is worrying. Back to
Yeah,
you.
it's definitely worrying. And I guess, I mean, I must confess that I'm not a Twitter user. Um, I was thinking of actually, yeah, getting into it a little more to explore what that space is like in terms of its own, yeah, ecosystem of the conversation. But it's a really good point about the connection with colonialism is, I think, quite explicit in that the like, yeah, the richest man in the world is not going to be basically the sole owner, or might be, of a huge mountain of data that can keep being mined for value that we're unaware of yet. And for me, that seems to be, that's really the sticking point that keeps coming back, is when it comes to this newer form of value that comes out of the data that we generate in our interactions that are recorded online. Many of us, I mean myself included, don't we don't really grok what that value is. We don't we don't understand it in terms of like money, because it isn't money. It's not that we're giving a platform like Facebook 10 cents every time we like or spend 15 minutes scrolling through uh, the feed. It's more that we are creating a level, our attention is being monetized, and we're then kind of alienated from the fruits of that. Like one of the examples that I read in an article was how when the Spanish conquistadors would, when they rode into indigenous villages in Mexico and Latin America, or what became Latin America, and South America, they would ride in on their horses and then read out some proclamation in Spanish to the natives who they knew didn't understand Spanish. And the proclamation would say something like, "We're going to take all of your money, all of your jewelry. We're going to sell your people into slavery," or whatever it was. They would explicitly state what they were going to do, but nobody could understand it. And so they would all agree. They'd say, "Yeah." They'd have a party that night, and then the next day they would start pillaging, and they'd be confused, like, "Why are you doing this?" "Well, we told you what we were going to do, and in a language that you didn't understand." And I think that same thing is happening when we sign up for terms and conditions on websites, when we allow cookies and things like that. Like, we don't quite understand why is a cookie sweet, like online. Why do apps want to track us around? Like, yeah, I don't think we quite understand that it's speaking a language that we're not really aware of, and the end result is that we yeah, we feel kind of fine. Like, well, I'm not being, I don't know, exploited or anything. But then you see how much money these tech giants have, and you kind of wonder how is this happening? And then with that money comes all of the political power and even geopolitical power. In that, yeah, with things happening like in Russia, Facebook can shut down access to their services for businesses that rely solely on Facebook services to operate in Russia. If the American company of Facebook decides that Russia's a non-starter, suddenly that's a that's a form of almost military action that they're taking against the Russian society itself. They're attacking like the people and their livelihoods because they're removing a platform that they use. So there's all this power embedded in the systems that we use and all the data that we generate on it. And it, yeah. So I guess the question is what to do. Like I'm not very interested in the like kind of staring down the barrel of it. Like, oh, this is just the world that we live in now, and we have to, kind of live with it if we want to have have nice things like interesting platforms where we can connect. No, there needs to be a more constructive approach. And I think that probably is moving more in the way of decentralization than centralization. And this Musk acquisition is, yeah, like the epitome of centralization. All of it going to one person. Um, yeah, those are just a couple of my ideas, though. I'm curious to know what other people are thinking about this. Yeah, anyone in the audience. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
It's I think, well, I think it's not just doom and gloom. There are opportunities. If we see trends, you know, just look at Facebook trend, for example. Okay, um, Facebook has been losing, what do you call this? Has been losing users. I'm trying to recall what the user is, and they have, due to bad publicity and due to the criticism of how they manage data. So, I mean, this is the plus point of what's happening. So some people do become aware, and the demographics of Facebook, what's happening is that a lot of them are, the younger people are moving out because they have taught their parents how to use Facebook, and they got out of Facebook because they don't want the parents to be, in there. And they tend to be very private now. Yeah, we see them all posting on TikTok and all that, but there is a general move towards those short videos and all that. But there's also a general move away from uh, from such platforms. So, and the active users in Facebook has actually been on the decline. Let me try to figure out the numbers, online. And if you look at the revenue and the business, though their net income have dropped almost 21% from last year, year on year. Last year, net profit margin dropped 26%, and they're not the Mark Zuckerberg. Meta is not the poster boy of social media anymore because of the way he's handling data, and he has also admitted that there are challenges in managing the data, yet at the same time he's not transparent enough to share that. So people are leaving, people are questioning, and there seems to be some impact to the company. So that's why they made a lot of changes, like, renaming their company and, changing strategy and so on. But it has not fully addressed it. So lesson here is that, um, if the trust is lost, if people continue to push this agenda that, hey, you need to take care of our data, we have to be careful what we're saying, we cannot give away data, and the companies who are entrusted to kind of be this platform for communication is misusing our data and so on, then we'll pull out. So this is what we have started to see, right, in where Facebook is concerned, right? And I think all this will also impact in the future if platforms like Twitter are not careful. They will also come out and they look for alternative sites, alternative tools to to communicate, right? But it will not be as widespread. It won't amplify negativity as much. For example, the lot of young people are moving away from public social media and they're going into private spaces like Discord, for example, and it's an application and they're very very private, right? You have to like remember to join your discussion and the administrator decides who can discuss, you know, and it becomes like a mini social media platform, but it's very very controlled. So that's one trend, and it's the Discord is so powerful that I think last year, or year before, Microsoft make a bid. Uh, if I recall the number, $30 billion, something like that, to buy over Discord. It's a private company, and the Discord refused to sell at that time. Right? So I think these are also interesting trends. There's a greater awareness, and we are also seeing, at least from the European side, increased regulatory frameworks to overcome, you know, this whole abuse of algorithms for profit, right? There's a huge movement on ethical AI, for example. The GDPR is constantly being reviewed, and I know there are other laws being considered and put into place. So I think there are positive signs towards that. So how effective they will be in the long run, we don't know. Okay, so the digital systems are known to circumvent regulatory frameworks. You know, it's a kind of cat and mouse games. They always, you know, try to be ahead of the regulations, and the regulations try to be ahead of the companies. So there's this cat and mouse games happening, but it's those are good signs. There are efforts to kind of regulate this, right? So so I think that there are positive signs lah, you know. So those are my views. I want to open up and see if anyone have different ideas, you know, how they view this whole situation, you know, of the tech companies taking control of your data, abusing them, and so on. Yeah.
Okay, I actually agree that people actually move away from the platform that they think kind of like control their data and privacy. Like a lot of people move away from Facebook and actually go for Twitter because they can actually tweet almost anything without censorship. But anyway, like the other thought would be like it also depends on the country as well. The like in the end, it's the government policy on the freedom of speech and stuff like that, and they can actually ban uh, the platform just totally. Look like in China, so nothing actually gets in, and this can actually divide our world. Yeah, like one is kind of like a lot of information, a lot of things happening. The other part would be like none of them. And a lot of people in Thailand are actually using Twitter. I'm not there yet because I think it would be overwhelming. And but many things are happening there really. I mean like it can be a future for a while till new platform is coming up, and we don't know yet if the government would be able to kind of like catch up with it or following it up and kind of like try to regulate it or actually let it free. Yeah, like in Thailand, Grab, for instance, it's illegal. I would say like the private car are becoming like commercial use, and the government is just not doing anything about it. So this platform is still operating, and I mean people utilize it because they have benefits on it. And I mean as long as it serves the purpose of the user, people are still using it, I guess. And then when the function maybe it doesn't fit the people needs anymore. It would just go to something else. Yeah, that's my thought.
That's such an interesting point about Grab. I didn't know that it was yeah, like maybe technically illegal in Thailand to use a private car as like a taxi service, and that's such a good larger point as well about um, what is it, like kind of governments maybe purposely slowing down their regulatory process to allow for new economies to develop inside, yeah, inside of that time span. Because I mean, it seems like Grab generates a lot of income, and yeah, it stimulates an economy um, that is good for the country as a whole, I guess. So I wonder if maybe you have any insight into that video, more about this cat and mouse game, and how maybe the cat is intentionally being a little bit slow because the the mouse is like driving innovation and might bring new businesses to certain countries that are trying to be emerging markets. And so how, yeah, like evidently the current economic system and model really supports the development of these types of technologies, and they're flourishing. Like there's many of them. They make lots and lots of money, and yeah, regulation seems to be pretty far behind almost in every case. Um, so yeah, I wonder if that says something about the underlying ethics of the regulatory process itself, or or what. Yeah, I'm curious if you have any ideas on that.
Um, I okay. I have a few points here, but let me talk about Grab first. I think, to be fair to governments, each regulation that is put together, uh, the assumption is they have gone through some thought process, and a regulation is put there for a purpose. In the case of Grab, Topsy, you are right, because you cannot allow a private car to be a taxi for one reason. The regulation, I would assume in Thailand, is the same, right? For one main reason, there is insurance. And if you have many cars, private cars going around picking passengers, collecting money, profiting from it, and what do you call that? Then you're putting lives of passengers at risk. So therefore, it has to be stopped. You can't do that. That's why it's illegal, right? So in some countries, like in Malaysia, for example, the regulation was changed to level the playing field. So if you want to be a Grab driver and you want to be we are promoting the gig economy and so on. You want to use your car and make money out of it. Yep. Then we have to balance, the government will balance the playing field. So, okay, you need to get extra license, make sure you have extra insurance, and you have to prove all that. Then you are allowed to be a Grab driver. So then it's fair. Then the situation becomes more equitable for taxi drivers. So taxi drivers can become Grab drivers, and private cars can become Grab cars. So the line is blurred. Now, in the case of Grab cars, the regulation is quite straightforward, because there is a case in the past, which is taxis. Taxis are set up for a particular purpose, right? And certain way of monitoring safety and so on. But it's not so easy when we look at social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Line, even, for example. It gets more tricky because there's no previous model, right? Grab tries to what do you call that? Change an existing model of the taxi to liberate it. So there is a model that they follow. In social media, there are no models. The only model is newspaper, you know, and coffee shop discussions. Right? You go to a coffee shop, you get together, you drink coffee, and you talk about politics, and the news spread. So there's no model, and there's no previously um, a previous model that can be more that can be copied in terms of regulation. So it becomes more challenging. That's why it's a cat and mouse game. Right? And regulators really need to be ahead of the game to understand the power of this whole data, digital platforms, and all even learning platforms for all that matter, right? So government needs to be ahead of the game, and government has always been behind the game. They've never been ahead of the game. That's the challenge. That's the biggest problem today.
I'm interested in, because in terms of this, if it's always going to be a kind of uh, yeah, if there's always going to be some one or some party ahead, and there's another one needs to catch up. I wonder what the role of the public is in supporting that type, or yeah, making it known that they want that type of regulation, because I mean I'm sure there are campaigns to yeah improve elements of different platforms and even yeah the safety of platforms, uh, like grab, like if someone doesn't have the right insurance. I'm sure there are movements and like even like the taxi unions, for instance, would want to uh, yeah get rid of this new competition. Like I know in London, Uber became illegal for a while. I'm not sure exactly sure how long, but that was because it was driving out all the business from the black cabs, which are kind of considerably more expensive than an Uber. Um, I think, I mean, Uber still operates, yeah, daily in London, and so do black cabs. But so I'm not entirely sure how that like kind of how that issue was sorted out. But I have a feeling that it was, well, if anyone can become an Uber, then also black cab can become an Uber. But it seems like I'm just curious that, do you think the public really cares about the regulation? Because it seems to be that the easier that life gets with a new app to do something, or a super app that can do everything, um, the less people are concerned. They're just more happy to kind of veg out and like just use the services as an extension of what they already do without a lot of critical engagement. Um, and so I wonder if what can be done in terms of like public service announcement or awareness campaign that you think might actually be effective in bringing maybe more of this type of critical thinking to the to more people, because yeah I'm just worried that like if the ultimate driving force is going to be how profitable something.
Oops, I think we lost Dexter
Yeah, and Doreen.
and Doreen.
Oh, and Prashan.
Or they finally decided this is not an interesting discussion.
Maybe it's a system. I mean, like maybe they are hearing us.
Not a bit more
Yeah, but
stable.
anyway, I still see that like you can't actually colonize the whole, how do you call it, like the online users, because they are so different kind of online user. Maybe you get the majority of the people in the world using your app, but once it doesn't serve the purpose of their life or their enjoyment anymore, it will move. Like remember we had high five long time
Mm,
ago, and we had like ICQ, which is like how long ago, like 20 years ago. And when it doesn't serve the purpose, and when the tech company doesn't actually have innovation, like new innovation, this thing will die out. And I find smaller scale innovator, maybe they are more creative because they want to be independent. Maybe they don't want to work for a big company, and maybe they have better idea of how to tap in like attention of people, and I still see the future not going down the drain. Yeah, I still see like younger generation, they want to be independent, they don't want control, and they are very innovative. Yeah, there wouldn't be a control by big company that
Yeah.
long. Yeah, it can be a certain period of time, but it's not gonna be like forever.
Yeah, I'm in that sense, I'm quite hopeful and positive about this. It's a natural progression, you know. That I like what a lot of the young people are doing. Young means really young ones, you know, talking about 18, 19, 16, 17 year olds, right? They decide on the platforms they want. They start to think of more disruptive technologies like blockchain, you know, to be decentralized. So there's a lot more of that, but it's still a very small minority. In the challenge today is also an economic challenge. Just want to extend on what Dexter was talking before. He got thrown out of the internet. You know, the why does the Grab model works even though they know it's not safe, it's illegal? Because of economics. Grab addresses the 70% of the middle lower income who don't want to pay too much more for taxis and the regulated ones, because the regulated ones incur a lot of cost paying for licenses, paying for, you know, inspections, you know, and have to service their cars, their vehicle every 6 months or whatever. It's cost, and that cost is passed on to the consumers. When somebody comes up with a different alternative, it's it's a great idea. And I'm sure that even before Grab in Thailand or in many parts of Asia, we have this. Each country have their own term for this. Is for illegal taxis. I'm sure every small town, way before Grab, were doing this, right? Because it's a viable, economically viable alternative, right? And they are ready anywhere. They just come by and stop and hey, wave the hand with you. Do you want to live to the app to the bus station? It will cost you so much. Jump on, you know. So no safety, no insurance, but it's cheaper, it's easier, more convenient, right? So that's one of the economic models we need to address. They know that is not safe and so on, but you know, I think economics do play a very important role, and it boils back to this. This boils back to very fundamental areas of um, this inequality, in the unequal distribution of wealth, and that's propelling companies like Grab to be very successful because they give an alternative, right? So regulators need to really think and allow this to happen in a much safer environment, right? But on the level of data is something else, right? I'm not surprised if companies like Grab and Uber are collecting your demographics, your age, you know, your personal data linked to where you go, you know, and have your entire movement mapped out, and they can probably tell you where you are going to go before you plan on going, right? And that's pretty scary, right? So that's your information, that's your data, and they extrapolate that information about you and sell it back to you ahead of time. So that in a way is colonizing. I mean, they're colonizing you. They're taking something from you and selling back to you, right? They're extracting information from you, where you give willingly or unwillingly or known or unknown, you're sharing out that data. So that's a very small way how this whole tech environment is profiting from all the data that's available. Right. So we need to also really think about this, lah, right? Unless there's a truly open platform where no one really in control, you know, then I think it's viable, right? Elon Musk said that he will make it open, free speech, these are all headlines, you know. So if he talks about headlines and don't give you details, you have to be very careful, what he really means. I'm skeptical personally. Yeah.
Well, one of the ironic things about Twitter is that it's all about headlines. You've only got like 250 characters or something. Can't get into any details there. It's all really about like, yeah, kind of sensationalizing information to get people to retweet it. Yeah, and I mean, I've read a couple things about when Elon Musk says, things like freedom of speech. What does he actually mean by that? And it is the freedom of speech on Twitter. Like, for instance, he said that he wanted to make Twitter as free as possible in terms of speech, in alignment with the First Amendment of the United States. But you can do you can say really dreadful things in alignment with the First Amendment. It's your right to say whatever you like. And a lot of the things that could be said in terms of, yeah, everything from racism to inciting violence to, yeah, whatever you want, it would be perfectly legal, but would be, rather disturbing to be a part of if that was part of if you were seeing all that stuff all the time, which is part of the reason why Facebook has, like, in fact, every social media platform has its own standards for the content that are on it, which may not necessarily align with local laws. They may actually be a lot more stringent because there's vulnerable people on those platforms that may see something that could be, yeah, quite damaging to them or to their community or others in ways that you can't predict. So when he talks about freedom of speech, it's a little bit of it brings up an interesting topic, because when we talk about freedom, how free do we really want or need to be, in terms of what is expressed in a public space? Yeah, I'm curious if you have any ideas on that, and then also just one tiny point on extracting data. I'm sure that within maybe 10 years, when we have more of these kind of wearable pieces of technology that might make augmented reality pretty much standard for anybody who wears glasses, um, on your ride from your house to, like, for instance, to play uh, ultimate frisbee, if you do that every weekend, Grab knows what you're doing. It knows how long you'll spend there. Do you think you'll start seeing billboards like change for, oh, look, buy these new cleats, or check out this, you can go to this event, or like things like you'll have these hyper tailored advertisements where four people can be looking at the same billboard and see completely different things. I think that that's right around the corner, and especially with the kind of data mining that, or not even mining, it's just like collecting. It's like a new form of fishing almost, that these super apps have. That's a huge resource that I think they're stockpiling, and then in the future we'll be able to use in entirely new ways, well beyond the scope of the activities that you're doing on that application you're using it for. So that's really interesting as well in terms of, like, just, yeah, casting a wide net for the future. But I'm curious about, maybe you guys think about this question of freedom of speech and what that might mean if Musk really makes it, quote, really free. Yeah.
Yeah, I also see the potential of like these big tech company collaborating with each other and also with the non-tech companies. Once they have information of you, like what kind of things you buy, what kind of things you like, they might kind of like, for instance, like in Thailand, they might contact Chalerm Pokapan, which is CP, who owns almost everything in daily life, 7-Eleven, Macro, all this stuff, and into kind of like the technology that people be using to enhance your life. And I can still see that like your life in the future would be more convenient. But again, like you trade it off with your personal data. And I don't think a lot of people actually mind that once it been used to actually benefit you. And yeah, but the real question is that how people can be mindful about this thing. People tends to buy stuff and get stressed because they don't have enough money to buy, or if they want this and that, but they don't earn. And yeah, I mean that there should be a way to actually address this, because it's gonna be more social problem created from this thing that I can see. Yeah. So it's not only like one big company controlling the thing that they run in their own business. They might actually collaborate with other business that have low technology but provide some other services. Yeah.
Yeah, Topsy, when you first said that, the name that came to my mind was Amazon. Right? Amazon not only run their own stores, they have many stores for people to run online. So they become a platform, um, a retailer for retailers, right? And the amount of data that is mining, is huge that they are taking from there. But if we rip that apart and we try to disassemble this whole thing, what are we dealing with? I think we are continually dealing with the issue of consumerism and the buying more than we need, you know um, and it's something that you know we have been trying to understand and trying to address this, because and this links to whole sustainability, climate change, because we are buying, there's a lot of waste and so on. So I think these are all related, right? So we are tackling the issues of consumerism, in a way, in a very different uh, environment. And the way we tried to tackle it 20 years ago, I remember in INAP that we had this whole sessions those days in the conference. We talked about consumerism, how do we, mindful consumerism and so on, mindful consumption, right? Right. But now this dimension of the digital space takes mindfulness of mindful consumption to another level. We really need to think about how to message this um, to the users, and not just be carried away, because having data that you own, um, data about yourself, being pushed to retailers or media retail platforms, and pushing back to you to decide what you would like to buy next and make you buy it, is something we really, really need to, think about very carefully. Because the more we are trapped in this, the more data is captured, and where more data is captured, they know more about you than you know about yourself. So it makes it selling, very different and very aggressive, um, and is run counter to a conscious, mindful consumption mindset. So I think we need to really think about how to message this. I don't have all the answers, but I know we need to tackle this. Yeah. Dexter was saying about freedom of speech. Let me address that. Um, Let me share my thoughts on this. Freedom of speech and the ability to think are two different things, right? You may be just speaking out of emotion, anger, and lack of the ability to think through a problem, does not mean it's a good freedom of speech. And with platforms like Twitter, like you mentioned, Dexter mentioned, it's all about headlines. 160 characters. You condense all your thoughts into that. Essentially, it's more emotion than thoughts, right? Out of 100 people, maybe 90 people fit within one box. Very few people take the trouble to treat threats, continue thinking and go deeper into that. Uh, Twitter has that function, but very few people use it. So what we need to really think about, and possibly how do we intervene, is to look at this whole thinking process. Our attention span is getting very, very short. TikTok runs 30-second movies, and videos, and that's the rage. You know, the attention is 30 seconds, right? And it's run counter to our whole digital, our Bodhisattva engaged Buddhism framework of concentration, mindfulness. I think we really have to think seriously about this. Yeah, we can't go against the whole thing, but I think we need to know how to live with it, how to how not to be driven and lose our minds, as it were, you know, over these phenomena that are happening from the digital space.
I really, yeah, I really resonate with that video, and I'm curious as well in terms of thinking about where these types of where this type of thinking can lead us. Like you said, you know, that there's a real need for kind of education or capacity building, so to speak, around the way the framework that we're engaging with when we consume online or when we generate data, and how that actually becomes part of a really massive system, that, in a sense, is extracting value out of us, um, in exchange for more convenience or uh, something like that. So I'm curious if something was going to be designed, or if you know of any initiatives like that yeah, are maybe able to break down the complexity of this type of thing, because it is fairly complex. Like the notion of data itself and the value of it can be fairly abstract. Um, it's only when we hear examples that are clear, or we have our own, you know, weird experience of seeing an ad on YouTube that's exactly what you were talking about with a friend an hour ago or a day ago. Like that, most people have now had that type of experience, but think like, oh wow, my phone's listening to me, haha, that's weird, and then move on. um, until it happens again. So it's more like, oh, we yeah, we pretty much recognize that something is afoot, or uh, you know, the technology we're using is pretty much more complex than we are competent of. How can we raise our level of competency to match, or at least begin to understand the complexity of the thing that we're using, um, as a sort of like like a basic operating manual for living with this kind of technology? Um, because I think the less that people are aware of how the things work, the more likely they are to just um, use them however the platform wants them to be used. Because these platforms are designed in very specific ways. They're not sandbox environments where we just kind of do our own thing. They're designed to funnel and extract certain pieces of information. So we need to learn how that maze is set up, and it doesn't have to. We don't have to be like Luddites and say you can't you can't use these things, but just be aware of the implications of it and um, how it works. What approaches do you think there are to that aren't entirely overwhelming, that, you know, don't require like, you know, all this like, in-depth information, things that people can really relate to? I'm curious, because I think that's a way that we can begin uh, bringing more people into this type of mode of thinking, and even being able to practice new means of engaging with technology, which I think is, yeah, a big motivating force behind Digital Bodhisattva, is to have these discussions and think about, okay, what's like an alternative structure that we could build, and that the alternative structure might just be an internal structure, like an internal way of relating to the world, which is seems to pretty much be what Buddhism is about, like in the first place, and then in the second place, you engage it to build or change structures to reduce the suffering. So yeah, I'm curious if you have any ideas on like some first steps towards that. Um, yeah, or any other thoughts from anyone else, please. I'm very curious to hear what other people think.
I think Digital Bodhisattva now, after so many conversations and having interest from different places, not just on Clubhouse, is towards thinking about starting up an active group, kind of think tank, if you like the term, okay, and to really sit around and contextualize the challenges, the social issues brought forth by this whole digital revolution, and contextualize it within the social spiritual engagement, um, and giving it meaning and giving it what I call giving it approaches lah. I like to use the term to find spaces for intervention. Where do we find the space? Where do we embed ourselves? Where where the message and the efforts goes to the right place and it carries a maximum effect. So I think we are much ready now. We can build towards setting this small group and then expand on that, and let's take it from there, right? So this is my view and this is my suggestion, and I think in the coming conference this need to be a topic. This need to be a this need to be an item, a critical item, right, moving forward. Right. So there's so much information, there's so much things out there. We need to really be able to hold it and understand it, right? And different people have different views of this, different depth of it, and it's important to bring different people together. I don't think any spiritual, religious based organization have actually done this yet. Not that I know.
Yeah, I think we're breaking new ground and doing it in a very intentional way. That there hasn't been a rush, and like you said, finding a key point of entry is precisely how we can begin shifting something that is, yeah, becoming quite deeply embedded and requires some deep reflection in order to see see the reality as it is. Um, yeah, and I find that really encouraging. Actually, it feels like a place that we can make an impact and make a lasting one as well. Um, I'm also conscious of the time. We've been here like over an hour. We typically only go for about an hour. So if anyone has any other thoughts to tack on here, um, go ahead. Otherwise, we can wrap it up pretty soon. Jump on in.
I think I also like the side discussion, the chats that's happening on the sideline. You know, yeah. So you might want to share some of that, Dexter.
Yeah, it's a really good point about the business plan thing. I was reading that as well. It's quite absurd that you would use that much money and not have a business plan. But this is also part of the worrying element of this. Yeah, quite a maverick taking the reins of what is essentially just going to be his own, his own platform. Or that seems like what it's moving towards. Putting kind of like, yeah, Tony Stark in the seat of Twitter would be a little bit, I don't know. It'll be very interesting to follow, and I'm also not entirely sure how well Twitter will do once he kind of takes over. It'll be something very interesting to see. And something that I was also reading was that this point about Twitter being actually one of the smaller major social medias in terms of users, and how a lot of those users are based in the United States, and a lot of them have, yeah, kind of a political angle or a cultural one. So it's less, it's maybe less casual than something like Facebook, where you just post a picture of your dog. But so yeah, I'm curious, really curious to see how it unfolds, and especially these like weird mogul dynamics of someone who, yeah, is definitely approaching major business things like this with quite, yeah, in quite a unique way. So it'll be a good one to follow. We can do a follow up, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Dexter. And I mean, like the last thought, it just popped up. I mean, at least if the server is run by like renewable energy or producing the products using cleaner technology, that would be great to see actually, because they own big tech technology that allow that to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be really good to see. Um, yeah, the whole energy side of it is quite interesting as well. That we all just kind of take the resource of electricity for granted. Like all these things run on electricity. And there's all sorts of yeah, major impacts that come from the generation and extraction of fossil fuels and all that good stuff, which is very much embedded in, yeah, it's the motivating force driving the whole thing. So it's, yeah, there's a lot of complexity there, and that's why it really does require parsing it out into kind of manageable little chunks and thinking like, oh, maybe there is an avenue in terms of the energy, like that's definitely a foundation block of the whole thing. So if that could be shifted towards a more like slightly conscious or environmentally friendly direction, maybe technologies built with it might follow suit. Yeah, that's really interesting. So I think that yeah, I'm happy to close the room here, and yeah, thank you all for joining. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to our next conversation, which will be held probably, hopefully next week, but maybe the week after. More details to come soon. Uh, Digital Bodhisattva also just started a Facebook page, so you can like our Facebook page. This was being streamed on that Facebook page. So yeah, you can like it. That's a way of getting people to join the conversation if they don't have Clubhouse. Yeah, so thank you all for joining, and I hope you have a splendid rest of your evening/day. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Dexter. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Dexter. Thank you, Topsy. Thank you, everyone.